So, thank you for your attention this morning. I won't take a lot of your time. I have a few serious matters to discuss with you, which has to do with the spring studio that John Bond and I and some colleagues who will be acting as consultants will be doing at SciArt this spring. The fact of the matter are simple, and they are of great concern to me, and so we're going to be doing our studio about that. I was looking at some photographs recently during President Obama's visit to China, and I noticed something interesting. In 2 days, the image went from this to this. And I thought, what happened in 2 days that they went from not being able to speak to one another to signing an agreement that no one expected them to sign on a topic that they were as wide apart as they could possibly be. And then, not 2 months later, the price of oil started to plummet to $50 or below $50 a barrel. Now this shocked me in particular, since I know, and you all know, one thing, that there is a very little amount of oil left. In fact, looking it up, I discovered there's less than 40 years left of crude oil on Earth. There's about 50 years left of frackable oil after that, which gives us about 100 years left of petroleum or fossil fuel. Looking into it further, I discovered in the report put out by the National Science Foundation under a task force commissioned by the White House that the plans for conversion to a sustainable energy, alternative energy future contained, at least in the original version, a minorities comment section which said we would not be ready to make the transition under the current technological circumstances by the end of those resources, and that this posed dire consequences for not only for our country, but for Western civilization. Now, these minority comments became the focus of my research. What they suggested was that we could bridge this transition period by using kerogen. Kerogen is a source of fossil fuel, and in fact, up to as much as 500 years at our current rate of fossil fuel expenditure. On the other hand, it is a devastatingly horrible material in terms of its cost, in terms of pollution, in every possible conceivable way. So, after completing the National Science Foundation report and becoming particularly interested in the issue of kerogen from the minority comments, I decided to investigate further. And as I did, to my surprise, I came across the fact that the National Security Association, the NSA, as early as in 1953, had begun to prepare the American public about a possible or the likely future of a world in which we would have no oil. Interestingly enough, this showed up in the Snowden papers, in which many of the NSA documents, though unclassified, appeared. The project that they started was called Project F, which stood for Project Future. And what they would do is commission artists and writers in various media to write stories and paint pictures and do television shows, etc., to produce works about imagining a future without energy, without oil. The first of these was F451 by Isaac Asimov. After that, there was F111 by James Rosenquist, F Troop, a comedy on television set in the Old West. Oh, of course, I should have mentioned FAT, architecture, or FAT, and on and on and on. It goes all the way up to many people think Facebook or Facebook is one of these projects. Now, if you think about it, Fahrenheit 451, or as we know it, is actually not a story in these terms about an attack on the ideology of books, but a story about a world in which there's not enough energy to keep people warm, and so we have to burn books, which is one of the easiest resources of burnable materials, and not only books, but people. The painting F-111, because Rosenquist was a Jew, if you read it from right to left, as you would a Jewish text, you will notice that it begins with the atomic bomb, an exorbitant source of energy and a tremendous technological achievement. And then you see light bulbs and hair dryers, a kind of excessive use of electricity, and lots of gasoline, represented by the car tires. And then slowly, it fades out into nothingness, a world in which there is no oil. And so you see these on and on and on and on. And so these, and there have been many of these F productions by the NSA, and we know this because the files showed by Snowden date from 1953 until present day. Now, the way I've come to know all of this is because the NSA has commissioned me and 8 other teams to do a new project called Lower, or F Lower, in which we are to make proposals for architectural settlements to help bridge the transition, the Kerogen transition, which is expected to begin in 2080 and last between 50 and 100 years. To respond to the NSA's invitation, I constructed a diagram which is embodied in this flower, and I put the team together and organized our program from that, and you can find details of the program in the documents that were provided separately. There are 4 parts of the program. The first part is sacred geometries, which is represented by the turtle. The second part is how we take on the responsibilities of philosophy and literature. We were going to be using the method of loci, or the memory palace technique, which is exactly what you saw in Fahrenheit 51, where they actually memorize the book.
I'm
going to relate a tale full of horror.
Just like in that book, we will be given expert advice on that by Ron Cooley, who is the national championship memory expert. After that, we go up to the local archaeological and anthropological, both ancient and modern. Most importantly, Forrest Meggers and Russell Fortmeyer will be providing the input on the key issue, which is the corona of environmental protection, which now the 2 engineers will be teaching us the principles of exergy, which is a kind of low energy environmental control, and then we on our own will be studying local authentic traditions of comfort. And where exergy meets authentic local traditions of comfort, you get the corona of environmental low energy. And this is the principle of the studio. I hope to see you. Thank you very much for your attention.